Welcome to the Grit and Grow podcast, where we talk to guests who are pursuing excellence in both sport and life, who encourage and motivate us to become better mentors, coaches, parents, and athletes. My name is Shane Sowden, head men's basketball coach at Briarcrest College, and also your co-host.
And my name is Justin Simpkins, co-host and director of Prairie Hockey Academy. Welcome back to Grit and Growth. This is part 2 of our conversation with Jason Caldwell, world record-holding ocean rower, leadership coach, and founder of Latitude 35. If you haven't listened to part 1 yet, hit pause and go check it out first. We really recommend hearing that before diving in. In this episode, Jason talks about rebuilding after failure, what it means to choose the right people instead of just the best ones, and how his experiences as a son and now as a dad shape the way he leads and lives with courage. Let's jump back in. Jason, at the end of part 1, you talked a little bit about the learning and the lessons and just really sitting in, creating space for yourself. Really, I'd almost say to choose to be honest with yourself, and it's like this radical responsibility is what I could kind of hear you talking about. Going, we will hear it sometimes like this window and mirror test. It's like, are we pointing a finger? Are we looking out the window? Or are we looking in the mirror at ourselves? And we get this chance as leaders every single day to be honest with ourselves and choose. And what are we going to take responsibility? And you did, and that was your first ocean race attempt across the Atlantic, and I think it ended up being a 51-day adventure, right?
Yeah.
And then building that team to the second. And inside of your documentary, you guys, you say, you talk about, a lot of people just talk about this idea of getting knocked down and getting up again, knocked down and getting back up again, but it's not. It's a lot more than that. I think your words were something like, it's like when you get knocked down, you have to spend time on the ground, understanding and learning about what got you there. And you detailed that at the end of part 1. Going into part 2, going into your second ocean race, though, things changed. And you were you had a different intentionality maybe in your makeup of your team and just in your leadership is what got spoken about a lot. So talk to us about the reflection that happened, the learning from being on the ground, and then how you built that next team.
Yeah. So one of the things I in that time that I spent processing and being very honest, I realized what I alluded to in our first part there, which is that a lot of the failures are made on the shore, whether that's a physical shore like ours or the metaphorical shore, which is usually like before the season starts, before the project starts, whatever you want to call it, but like on the shore. And I'm realizing that like it was pretty doomed before we left, and so I was not going to make that same mistake. I knew I was going to make other mistakes, but I wasn't going to make that one again. And I was like, we've got to get the right guys, here. And so it's a very different way of thinking about building a team when you're thinking about the right people versus the best people. And in fact, actually, a lot of ways, it's lazy to just go ahead and try to get the best guys. It's like, no one's going to fault you if you go get the guy with the best stats or the fastest erg time or the best resume. Like, you're never going to get fired for hiring the guy with the best resume, even if he doesn't work out, because you're going to look and say, who wouldn't have hired this guy? Look at his resume. But if that's self-preservation, but if you're really trying to do something special, you got to work harder than that. You got to find the right people. Maybe the right person is also the best person, but maybe it's not. It'd be nice if it is. Hey, this guy's the best, but he's also the right guy. So when you're talking about the right people, though, you got to start digging a little bit deeper, and you got to start looking for, and it's different for everything that you're doing. For us, I was like, what am I looking for? What is this thing all about? And there was a couple things that I wanted. The first thing that I wanted was selflessness. I wanted someone to be more worried about everybody else in the boat than they were about themselves, knowing that if all 4 of us were doing that, everybody was taken care of. If I was worried the least about myself, that means there was somebody in that boat that was worried the most about me. And that's beautiful. And that's what Tom and I had, the 2 of us in our remaining, 2,400 miles that we had to go in that first row. we cared more about each other. And that's a beautiful thing. I just thought to myself, like, wow, what if we all did that? Like, that would be so powerful. That was the first real thing. Of course, we talked about this macho thing in part one, which was like, hey, I don't want machiness. But I'm going to be honest with you. I wasn't thinking that overtly about that on the seg crossing. The Pacific Row I did years later, yes, more. But the other thing that was really big on this second Atlantic crossing was I realized, and again, being honest with myself, I didn't really have, I didn't include everybody in on the why of this row. It's like I kind of just said on the first crossing, like, here we go. We're going to try to row this ocean and be the fastest team to ever do it. Like, if you hear a big guy like myself who's got some rowing clout say that to you, you're going to nod your head. You'll be like, yeah, that sounds great to me. That's easy to say when you're on shore, when you're well rested and you've eaten plenty and you've got, like, but 600 miles into this 3,000 mile row, you can see it had devastating consequences. No one had their, as I call it these days, I call it other people's fingerprints on the why. Like, you got to get as many people's fingerprints on this thing. And at the first crossing was just me. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to do as fast as we can, in or out. Yeah, everyone's going to say in at that time. But when it gets tough, that's where you're going to have a problem with it. So I realized I got to ask everybody else, like, what do you really want from this? So we got the team together, Angus, and Alex and Matt. And it was time to start asking everybody what they really wanted out of this. And this is this idea of like individually, like, what are you trying to get out of it? Well, you got Angus, who rode against us in the first race, won the race, but didn't break the world record. Missed it by 3.5 days. Felt that the weather, Hurricane Alex, stole it from him. He always used that word. It was like very visceral. Like, they stole the record from us. So he's got something. He's got an axe to grind on the Atlantic. You got Alex that rode the Indian Ocean with Angus a few years back. Had a bad experience, bad crossing. Was close with Angus, but these other two teammates were not close. Very toxic environment. And he wanted to have a great experience on an ocean crossing. It's very different than breaking a world record. That's a different individual why. And then you had Matt, who we've already talked about, who had recently failed to qualify for the Olympics and was looking for that next thing he could be part of. And then there's me. I've got, I'm trying to do this thing again, but I've made a lot of mistakes. I'm not the leader that I thought I was, and I'm going to try to be better at that. So 4 very, very different individual whys. So it's like, okay, now that we're all talking about this, how do we make all of those things a collective why? Like the vision of the team. And this is where, and I'm stealing this from a colleague I work with, a professor at UC Berkeley, but he wrote a book called Growth for Both. And I just think that is like an incredible kind of way of thinking about this. How can we take the individual whys and make it the collective why? How can we have growth for the individual and for the team? Growth for both. And so that's what we did. We started to like put together, what was going to be our true why. Now, as it turns out, everybody did want to win the race and break the world record. So that's fine, but it didn't come from just me. It came from everybody. It came from 4 completely different perspectives. And that right there is something that you do on land, not in the middle of the ocean, but on land. That was the big differentiator between, hey, we're going to go out there and do this because I said so. 600 miles in, you got guys that just don't want to be there anymore. Then you go, hey, let's all talk about it. Let's all ask each other, what do we want? You hit the next big thing, the big storm, when you're out there and you're like, hey, we all agreed on this. We knew this was going to happen. Don't forget about why you're here. You're here for yours, but you're here for all of everyone else's as well. That's huge.
That's awesome. It is huge. And that Growth for Both sounds like an awesome book, but just making it a collective why, very intentional. And I think makes a lot of sense when we bring a team together, any team, whether that's a 15-year-old group of hockey players or basketball or anything, especially a sales group. I could see that, as you talked about earlier, sales teams as well.
I mean, it's kind of like think about like asking your kids, like, what do you want out of this year? Like, what are you doing? What are you doing on this team this season? Like, I bet you those kids have never been asked that. They will need to think about that question. And they'll probably just say, I love hockey, or I love basketball, or I just want to win. And then I would challenge them, like, I mean, that's a product of why you're going to be here. Like, that stuff may or may not happen. But like, what is it? I mean, and if you really got to answer, be like, because I want to live up to the expectations of my father, which is okay as long as we know that that's true. Or my goal is to one day play professional, and this is the next step, which is okay. Or these are my best friends, and I love being part of a team, which is okay. Or I just love wearing the jersey and walking around campus with the jersey on. As long as we know this stuff, then we can work with it. But like the first step for anybody is just asking them that question, because I can guarantee you they probably have not been asked.
Right.
Jason, something that was powerful for me from watching the documentary was your relationship with your father. And first of all, I was jealous because you were a left-handed pitcher. I was a right-handed pitcher. I wish that I was left-handed, but I wasn't. But it was really hard when you stepped away from baseball for your dad. And like, we're in the middle of Canada. Hockey is king. We have a lot of high-level, high school hockey players. One listening to this podcast, striving to be at the next level. Some have aspirations for professional. One of my players, we just had our first graduate. He's playing pro overseas. I see this dynamic of players, student athletes carrying this weight of expectation from their parents. I'm just thinking about our listeners right now. We got high school, college, we've got parents, we've got coaches. What would you say to the athlete and then the parents who are kind of in a very similar situation that you and your dad were in when you chose to walk away?
Such an important question, such a hard question to answer. I would just, I'm in it right now because I've got a 6-year-old and, who's just starting to play organized sports now. We're kind of slowly transitioning from the time where he was just a toddler and a small boy, where it was just free play between me and him, and go into the park to now like organized sports where they're keeping score and, all this stuff. So I'm in it. Like I think about how I was when I was a kid and my relationship with my dad, as you mentioned, then how I'm going to be as a father moving forward as he gets older and obviously into sports. I'm just like everybody else. I was affected by it. You know from the documentary that I just kind of decided I was done playing, like kind of living out the dream of my dad. Yet I find myself in the stands watching his basketball game as recently as yesterday, and like really like trying to like, oh God, take that shot. Why would you not take that shot? I was like, this kid's 6. What are you doing? Like, so I'm telling you, like, if there's anybody that should not be doing that, it would be me. Yet I'm still, maybe it's a little quieter, but I'm still doing it. Like, so first thing I do is just acknowledge that it's hard to be a parent and not do that stuff. Like, it'd be easy to go on the offensive against the parents here. Like, gosh, if my dad hadn't done that, who knows what I'd have done. First of all, let's just say it's tough to be a parent.
Very
you
hard.
Want the best from them. Like 99% of parents, it's coming from a good spot. They just want something better for their kids than they had. Their dad didn't give a SHIT, so then they're caring maybe too much. It's like it's always coming from something. So first and foremost here, I'm speaking to the parents. I feel you. I see you. It is tough. Okay, we know that now. Now for the kids. You have to understand, first of all, what brings joy and happiness to your life. This is number one. Number one. Like, I know that we're already supposed to know that, but there are so many people that have never really thought about if they actually love the sport they're playing. I thought I loved baseball, but as I think I mentioned in a doc, as it turned out, I just really loved my dad and he loved baseball. But as a kid, it is really hard to differentiate between the two. I love my dad so much and he loved baseball so much that I thought I loved baseball so much. As it turns out, I didn't. I liked it. But when I got my first time I ever got in a boat, I remember saying, oh my God, this is love. I remember being so close to water. I was like, I've never been so close to the water before without being wet. Like, I remember that was the first thought. Like, I'm a 20-year-old thinking these things, like little child thoughts like that. And I just remember take a stroke. And I mean, on a boat, we were not rowing very well, but I couldn't get over how beautiful the sport was. Fast forward to another month later, I'm just so absolutely enamored with this sport in a way that I had not been enamored with baseball or football and the other sports I grew up playing after years and years of playing them. I didn't realize that I this is love, and this we know this too. Like, we have our first love in high school or when we're young, and parents always caution you, right? Because they say, hey, I'm so glad you're happy, but like, this might not be the final one, like, and so parents are actually on the opposite end when it comes to that. The kid's like, what do you tell me? This is love. This is it. And you're like, I know, but I know this might not be it. It might. And then, of course, you listen to your parents, you break up, your heart's broken. And then years later, you meet your future spouse, you go, oh my goodness, this is love. Okay, I get it now. The same parents that were cautioning you to make sure that you understand what true love is are the same parents that are pushing you to go down the same route, whether it's love or not. So, as a parent, let's think about that, the juxtaposition between our two modes of parenting. And as kids, think about your favorite things to do. Is it work? Probably not. Like, do you get into flow states, which I know well, I don't have time to get into that, but like, how often are you getting to flow states with the thing that you're spending so much time on? If you're not getting into flow states and you're not absolutely can't wait to get up that morning and do that thing, then maybe you start questioning what it is. It took me injuring my arm and choosing not to get the surgery and not talking to my dad for months after that to finally understand that I wasn't in love with that sport. Thank goodness that happened, but that's not going to be everyone's journey. So I think just simply having some presence with the parents, just talking about love, like, not just love for your girlfriend or boyfriend, not love for your family members, but love for the thing that you're spending a lot of your extracurricular time doing. I hope that makes sense.
No, it's massive. And just love the perspective.
Hey everyone, it's Shane here. If you've been listening to the show for a while, you know I'm passionate about coaching. Not just running practices or drawing up plays, but building culture, leading well, and helping athletes grow as people. For me, one of the biggest game changers in my coaching journey has been working with my mentor, JP Nurbin, and his program at TOC Culture. Now, TOC is all about transformational coaching, giving you a clear framework, the tools you need, and the accountability to apply them with your team. And now they've launched something brand new, the Coaches Gym. It's an all-inclusive hub for transformational coaches. Inside, you'll find courses on working with sports parents, managing playing time without the drama, building the foundations of great coaching, and earning your transformational coaching and culture certification. Plus, there's an entire library of ready-to-use tools and systems to equip you to build a championship culture, and a private community of coaches who are walking the same path you are. Now, I started working with JP back in 2018, and it was a game changer for me as a coach in my program. I've gone through the certification process, I've used the tools, and it's been massive in our success the last few years of building a championship culture, both on and off the court. If you're serious about becoming the kind of coach your players remember for life, you've got to check it out. And because you're a Grit and Growth listener, you can save $50 when you sign up. Just go to tocculture.com and enter Grit Growth as the coupon code. That's all caps, one word, GRITGROWTH.
Jason, you're a dad now to one son, right? He's 6 years old, you mentioned. Do you guys have one kid or more than one at the moment?
Just one, 6-year-old. Yep, Tristan.
And we see him as a baby inside of the documentary as well. And I think your wife just does such an amazing job at the end of the doc, just talking about, you're talking about how you're a father now. This gives you new purpose. It gives you grace and new complexities in it all. New complexities in the sacrifice of you chasing adventure in so many ways. And I think in that, your wife does this really cool moment where she talks about, how she knows how much the struggles that you've gone through are going to play a part in your fatherhood and just teaching Tristan and helping him grow through challenges and necessary struggles, because they're actually really important for growth. And I think that's neat. And so I guess what I'm asking is, how many adventures have you done since then? And And how is that shaping you today as a father?
Yeah. Yeah, I love that part of the documentary, and yeah, my wife does a great job, and I appreciate that. That's the part that gets me the most choked up probably in the doc is seeing those little clips of Tristan, and then having my wife talk that way. So, I've rowed across the Pacific Ocean since he's been born. I've done a lot of like other things. I spent a month in the Amazon. But I've also, one of the big things too is I've also grown my business, since then. When he was born in August of 2019, very different place than we are now. We're much bigger. We've got more people working for us. I traveled a lot back then. I travel a lot now. And, I'm trying to figure out a way that I'm going to make sure that I scale this thing properly so that I don't have to be on the road as much. All those aside, I'm not going to talk about those. I'll tell you what. When you were asking that question, what came to mind, I was lucky enough to earlier this year. I shared a stage with Alex Honnold, the guy that climbed free solo. For those of you know, the rock climber, and then
Yeah.
the director of that documentary that won an Oscar, Jimmy Chin. So the three of us were on stage. We were doing some stuff for my company, and they kind of did a Q&A afterwards, and it just so happened to be falling on um, the week right before Father's Day. So the guy came on from the company that we were working with, and so let's talk. We're all dads here, and so he said let's talk about fatherhood. And so he's asking some kind of easy softball questions for all of us because Jimmy's got two kids, Alex now got two, I've got one, and this guy had two. So we're all dads, and at different levels. The guy asking us a question had adult kids, but still same thing. And he said, like, yeah, it's kind of the questions like, where's your responsibility lie now for you all to doing these tough things? I mean, because I'm rowing oceans, and Alex is climbing big steep rocks without ropes, and Jimmy's hanging off of ledges trying to capture these things and all that stuff. And we didn't know he was going to ask this question. So it's like nobody really wants to go first because nobody wants to look like the jerk that's going to say I'm going to still do these things no matter what. But Alex was the first one to decide. He took up the mic. He's like, I'll answer this thing first, which is, if you know Alex, you know that that's him. Like he's great that way. He is authentically himself. And he says, and this is something that stuck with me, and we all agreed with it, but he said, we have an obligation now. It's an obligation not to necessarily stay safe, although that is true. We have an obligation to make sure that our kids see the amazing things that we're doing through their own eyes. He's like, I do not want to be a dad that says, hey, I used to do some cool stuff before you were born, or go check out my documentary on Disney. Like, and you'll see how cool your dad was. He's like, they got to see it through their own eyes. They got to make their own decisions, and they've got to make their own, like, their thoughts around their own father through their own eyes. He said, that's the obligation. Yeah, I tie in more. Yeah, I might check it a couple other times. Maybe I'm not doing a free solo thing that I don't feel comfortable with. I'm coming down. He's like, those things are just natural. That's just self-preservation, especially when you're a parent. He's like, but the real obligation comes from us making sure that our kids can see that we still do great things. And he kind of like looked at both Jimmy and I was like, I don't know if I can improve on that, but that's exactly how I felt. And to be honest with you, it was like really reassuring. Like I felt so much more calm after that, because like, okay, for this whole time, for the last 6 years, I've been like, maybe I'm being selfish. And of course, there's a lot of people out there that will tell you that, they'll say things like, hey, I'm sure you're not doing these things anymore now that you're a dad. And you're like, well, I am still. Like, are you serious? You got in-laws, and you got family members, and you got friends, and you got all these people. And really what it comes down to is like, they can't see themselves doing those things. So then they project that onto you.
Mm-hmm.
So what I would just say is like leaving everybody with a little bit of advice, whether you're a parent or just, have people looking up to you, like, your life is not over because you have kids. And this whole thing where like, oh, now whatever I've done, I guess I've done it. Like, that's all I'm going to do. Now it's all about them. Like, that is true. You have to take care of them. But part of that is to show them that like what they can do is amazing through your actual actions. And I think that's it. And that's how I'm running my business. That's how I'm choosing and executing my adventures, is through that. So I love that. That's what I thought about. It's not really my story. It's kind of like Alex's story, but I totally agree with it.
I think it's good. I think it's a great answer.
Great.
And we need to teach our kids that, that idea that you talked about, fear also. It's like, it's ever present.
Yeah.
But it's like, how are we going to, how do we live in it? How do we learn about ourselves through it? And how do we tackle things in life still and adventure and do cool stuff? I had one question that kind of came to my mind. Sorry, Shane, I'm going to step on you a little bit here. It was kind of, in Latitude 35 or Lat 35, your leadership company that you run now, Jason, you're working with, you are working with a lot of, corporate America is my understanding inside of it too, leadership teams. And I look at some of the adventures and expeditions and I get that sense. I'm like, are there some executives that are a little scared that they just might die on some of this stuff? And what's the key man life insurance, or how do you go about helping them, especially if they have shareholders and everything, going, hey, this is what we want to get out of this, and this is what you're going to receive or experience from it. What does that look like? What kind of companies are coming to you, and what are they hoping to achieve through these experience-based education, leadership training?
Yeah, I mean, it's important to note that a majority of the things that I'm doing with other corporations are like workshops, or we have this thing called the Adventure Craft Academy. We have all these like pretty safe. We're all in a room together,
Yeah.
not on the water. We do have some cool experiential programs like our rowing program that's quite popular, but a small fraction of my clients are the ones like underwriting my big adventures, and are obviously, and they are loaded up with lots of signatures where I have to sign my life away, all that kind of stuff. So that aside, like, look, what the reason why I think Lat 35 is doing so well as a leadership and team development company is that a lot of people are interested in learning from people that have done it. They've gone out there and pressure tested a lot of this stuff. And that's, for better or for worse, that's kind of where I've come. I've been in leadership and team development for 20 years. It's actually my 20th year doing this work. 12 years as Lat 35, but 20 years in this work. And there's we know all the great books on leadership, and I love them too. Like, Simon Sinek and Adam Grant and Brene Brown, and we've got all the different frameworks as well. But you read them all, like, they will say that a lot of them have not spent a lot of time on teams. They've spent a lot, usually the team that they use as their biggest example is the team that they have as a result of them creating their company, because they got popular talking about teams. So, and those are great books, but what we know is that leadership, great teams don't happen in a vacuum. They don't. X plus Y doesn't always equal Z. And so if we can say, we love these frameworks, let's talk about these frameworks, but let's talk about what's really happening. That's what my clients are looking for, is like, hey, look, I'm in a specific situation where I'm a new manager. I'm taking over this team. I brought a couple people from my old team. I've got a few other people from this team. They don't trust each other. They don't know each other. They don't like each other. The last manager did a horrible job. There's no trust. And I've got 6 months to try to turn this thing around before I'm probably going to be on the chopping block. That's a real challenge that happens, by the way, all the time in corporate America. That man or woman is desperate to find out what they can do. And there is not a book that's going to wholly help them with that thing. So what happens usually is that they bring someone like us in, and they will say, hey, let's talk to these people, and I work with these intact teams for long periods of time, helping them do the thing. And sometimes they just need an outside perspective, So I've gotten to work with professional sports teams as well, doing the same thing. Sometimes they don't want their coach talking, or it's not just the leader of the team or the general manager. They want some guy that has no business other than saying, I just want to help. So that's another thing. Another way that we are used a lot is that we build training programs for existing training programs. So and then we design them, and then we deliver them. So a lot of times we're coming in, and new leaders are coming in every quarter to come through that program, and we give them a great head start on some of the ways that they can start thinking about being great leaders. Yeah.
So for listeners who maybe aren't rowing oceans or trekking deserts, the Amazon one makes me want to ask lots of questions. But I just think what's one actionable practice that they can adopt? Maybe it's this week, to build stronger teams or lead through some uncertainty.
I would say what we talked about earlier, which is this idea of asking people on their team, why do you want to be on this team? Asking them that open-ended question and seeing where that goes, and truly, truly listen to their response. Don't ask and then not listen. Listen. And if they don't have an answer right away, tell them that that's okay. Because most likely it might be the first time anybody's ever asked them that. And let them sit in it and be intentional and consistent with asking them what their answer is and helping them get that answer. That is going to build trust as a leader. You're going to get a lot of trust out of that. And you're going to actually know what's going to motivate this person at this point. Don't ever assume that you know what motivates an individual. You're probably wrong.
Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of the Grit and Growth Podcast. We hope that you enjoyed today's guest and the answers that they were able to give and the stories they were able to tell. If you did enjoy today's episode, we'd ask that you would just follow or subscribe to our podcast. It does help us get the word out in our message. Thanks again. Have a great day.